Guitar legend Eddie Van Halen died of cancer today. Few could match his speed or his influence to an entire generation of guitarists.
Eddie Van Halen's wasn't just a great guitarist. He was a truly great musician who changed rock music forever. He was born in the Netherlands and later moved to the United States. His early years were full of goals and problems. As he picked up his guitar, he couldn't help but think of a question. Would his unique sound change the music scene? Join us as we look at Eddie Van Halen's amazing journey from a humble childhood to becoming a famous rock star. Growing up different. Eddie Van Halen was born on January 26, 1955 in the small Dutch town of Nijmegen. He had a unique family because his mother, Eugenia, was a talented woman from Indonesia, and his father, Jan, played the piano and clarinet. Eddie grew up in a culturally rich home because his family was from both the Netherlands and Indonesia. He went to America with his family when he was a little boy to find a better life. When they moved to Pasadena, California, everything felt new and interesting. But Eddie didn't always find it easy to be different. Because of his varied past, he stood out, and sometimes he thought people were being mean to him. This made him strong, but it also made him sad and confused. He learned to value his unique background, which would later help him express himself through music. Eddie and his family had some unique problems when they moved to America to start a new life. Imagine not quite fitting in when you go somewhere new and speak a different language. Eddie was in a lot of tough situations, like being picked on at school because he was different from the other kids. Some people would say mean things to him, which made him feel left out. His family worked hard to make their new home fit them. From learning English to looking for work, they ran into a number of problems. Eddie saw both the problems and the will of his parents. That drove him. They never gave up. He learned that even when things are hard, you can keep going if you believe in yourself. Eddie's life has always been about music, even with all of these problems. His parents really wanted him to learn how to play the piano like his dad did. They had high hopes for him. Eddie learned how to read music and play the piano, but he really didn't love the piano as much as his dad thought he would. Eddie's life changed when he heard rock music for the first time. It looked like a spell. He fell in love with the Beatles and gave him life through their catchy songs and upbeat beats. Eddie saw that he wanted to write songs that would make people want to dance and sing along, not just play the piano. In his eyes, this was a turning point. Eddie picked up a guitar instead of the piano. He felt something with the guitar that he never felt with the piano. The place was loud, interesting, and full of chances. The guitar let him show how he felt, how excited he was, and what his dreams were, while the piano never could. Eddie chose his very first guitar with some help from his dad. It was just a simple tool, but Eddie thought it looked like a magic stick. A few hours of strums in his room while he dreamed of being a rock star. He smiled by moving his fingers around on the strings. Eddie was about to go on a singing journey that would change his life forever. Eddie Van Halen had ups and downs in his early life. He found his love of music while dealing with tough problems with kindness and strength. Inspired millions of people around the world, and that drive would finally help him overcome problems and reach greatness. In the heart of a little boy who loved rock music, a tale was beginning to grow. Eddie didn't just want to sing songs. He wanted to make something special that would make everyone happy, just like music had changed his life. Eddie Van Halen's trip had just begun, and it was full of hopes, problems, and a love of rock and roll. Find out how Van Halen came to be, and how Eddie's new ideas changed rock music forever, captivating people all over the world. Van Halen's progress. Eddie Van Halen wanted to play music with his brother Alex when he got really into playing the guitar. Together, they were pretty close and dreamed of being rock stars. In the early 1970s, they formed a band called Mammoth. They wanted beauty and strength in the music scene like a woolly mammoth. Eddie and Alex were just playing in their garage at first. They played around with different sounds and made music for hours. But they quickly learned that they needed more players to really make their work come to life. At this point, they met David Lee Roth, a man with a great voice who was full of life and energy. It was fun for the band to play because he made them feel crazy and happy. The bassist, Michael Anthony, then showed up. He added a smooth tone to make their songs sound better. When put together, Eddie, Alex, David, and Michael had the perfect set of skills. Still, being in a band wasn't all fun and games. They had a hard time figuring out how to work together. Each person had their own thoughts and style, which could sometimes lead to disagreements. They had to learn how to talk to each other and work together to make songs that everyone would like. It was a hard but important time for them as they came to define themselves as a band. It became clear to Mammoth that they needed a new name as they planned more shows. Their search was for something more personal and interesting. So they changed the band's name to Van Halen, which is Eddie and Alex's last name. This was very important to them because it showed how proud they were of their family and music. They were about to leave their mark on the world. Van Halen began performing in small bars on the Sunset Strip in Los Angeles. There was a powerful energy there. A lot of people wanted to see bands live, and Van Halen was ready to shine. Their music stood out because it mixed exciting guitar riffs with rock and catchy tunes. He started to develop his own skills that made their sound stand out, like a magician with his guitar. Eddie built his own guitar, the Frankenstrat, which was one of the coolest things he ever did. He put together parts from different guitars to make one amazing instrument. He could play this guitar in ways no one had ever heard of before. Eddie came up with a new way to play the piano by tapping, which means moving his fingers over the guitar strings. His music, which attracted everyone who heard it, became very clear and powerful because of this. As more people watched, their shows became more like stories. The band was becoming famous because they worked hard all the time. Van Halen was growing from a small garage band into a powerful musical force. Their problems turned out to be chances for them to make their own sound. At every show, they met people who liked their music, and their dream of becoming rock stars was coming true. As Eddie, Alex, David, and Michael grew, they found their place in the world of music. They were more than just a band. They were a family that helped each other through good and bad times. The fact that they were all ready to face the world showed that the best was yet to come. Breakthrough success. Van Halen came out with their self-titled debut record in 1978 and blew up in the music world like a supernova. Every song on the CD is a happy rock song that makes you want to jump up and dance. The first song, Runnin' with the Devil, made it clear that it would offer something different to fans. Aid's electric guitar riffs were the best sounds anyone had ever heard. When he played quickly and with emotion, it was like the music was alive. One of the best songs was Eruption, which had a short but amazing guitar jam that showed how talented Eddie was. He used a tapping technique to play two notes at the same time by hitting his fingers on the fretboard. Because of this, his guitar sings and screams in almost supernatural ways. There were hopeful musicians everywhere, and they all wanted to play like him. Eddie all of a sudden became an inspiration to young guitarists, encouraging them to pick up their instruments and try new methods. Another record hit was You Really Got Me, a cover of the Kinks' famous song. Van Halen's version was louder, faster, and had a lot more energy. It went straight to the top of the charts and let everyone know that this band is going to be big in rock music. Not only did their first album bring them fame, but it also changed the rock scene. Van Halen's sound, which mixed catchy songs with heavy rock, influenced a lot of other bands. That they showed that rock could be both strong and fun paved the way for a new crop of musicians. The expectations that came with Van Halen's rise in fame were the same ones that she faced. People became very interested in the band very quickly as they became one of the biggest names in rock music. They were on the road all the time, doing it night after night. It was fun, but it was also hard work. Eddie had trouble with the expectations of his sudden fame, just like a lot of other stars. Getting drunk was one of the hardest things he had to deal with. As the parties grew bigger and the focus got sharper, Eddie started drinking more to ease the stress. It was hard to balance the responsibilities of running a band with the fun of being a rock star. Eddie really enjoyed playing music, but sometimes he felt like he had to keep up the high level of energy. The band as a whole and him personally were hurt by this fight. Tensions began to rise, especially between Eddie and David Lee Roth. Both were talented and had strong personalities, but they had different ideas about the band most of the time. During David's show, which delighted the crowd, Eddie was focused on making new music. Because of this difference in style, there were some disagreements. They stopped being as relaxed and happy as they used to be and started acting tense. As they went from one place to another, their success felt heavy. Eddie and Alex worked hard to keep the band together, but disagreements about how to play and show the music caused cracks to appear. Eddie wanted to push the limits of his guitar skills and try out new sounds, while David focused on keeping the crowd happy with flashy shows. They overcame these problems by making amazing music and putting on amazing shows. Everyone was blown away by Eddie's guitar riffs, and his shows were loved for how electric they were. But below the surface, there was a constant battle to keep the group on good terms. As the pressure mounted, the band members had to deal with their own problems while also trying to keep Van Halen's progress going. Being true to themselves while also making their growing fan base happy was important to them. They were all learning as they went, which made things hard. Eddie's cutting-edge guitar playing shone through the whole thing. Even when things were hard, he put his whole heart and soul into his songs. His ability was always a ray of hope for the band and their fans. As much as people liked his skills, they also liked how much he loved and dedicated himself to rock music. When Van Halen became a big star, it was an exciting ride with highs and lows. Some people knew them from their first record, but being famous also brought problems that made them question their commitment to their music and bonds. Eddie's guitar would always be the most important thing in the room. It led the way and inspired a huge number of other artists to follow their dreams. No matter how hard things got, they were determined to keep making music together. Problems with creativity and music growth. It was hard for Eddie Van Halen to handle all of his feelings at the same time that Van Halen reached new heights. Even though the band was very famous, Eddie could tell that people were getting annoyed with the way they were going. He liked writing music, but he was worried that the band relied too much on cover songs, which were fun, but might not have been true to their sound. Eddie thought that keeping too many songs kept them from showing off their real skills. He wanted Van Halen to make their own name in the rock scene. Eddie decided to do things on his own in order to find a unique sound. Undercover, he began re-recording songs for their upcoming album, Fair Warning. This was a big step for him because it meant he was trying to direct the band's lives more directly. The process wasn't easy, though. Eddie and his friends had problems when he worked on new things and wouldn't tell them about them. Their different thoughts and goals for the band kept them all busy and led to arguments. While Eddie was re-recording, the band made some of their most honest and powerful music yet. But people had different reactions when he finally told them what happened. Others of his friends weren't sure about the change, even though some liked the new sound. This fight brought attention to how hard it was for them to balance Eddie's need to be creative with Van Halen's well-known image. Due to the pressure to keep their fame while also changing professionally, their relationships began to suffer. If you ask Van Halen, everything changed when their album 1984 came out in 1984. That was an important event in history that made them even more famous. The band's sound changed a lot on this record when Eddie added synthesizers, which mixed new wave elements with rock ones. These artificial sounds changed their music so it was more interesting to a wider range of people. Songs like Jump and Panama quickly became big hits and showed how versatile Eddie's music was. The song Jump became very popular because of its catchy tune and contagious energy. It was played on radio stations all over the country, and the music video that went with it helped the band's image as rock stars. Van Halen were happy to be alive in the early 1980s, when music videos were becoming more popular in the music business. Fans were drawn to their fiery shows and visually stunning videos, which also helped them become well-known in a new way. As rock bands became more popular, things changed in the scene. Other bands were playing around with computers and artificial sounds, but Eddie's guitar playing and unique style made Van Halen stand out. Some supporters liked the new method, but others weren't sure about it. They felt like the band was changing, and they missed the raw, hard rock sound of older records. But Eddie and the other artists were determined to grow and improve. The success of 1984 not only cemented Van Halen's status as rock stars, but it also opened the door for new rock music inspirations. They showed that it is possible to be open to change while still holding on to the things that make you unique. Eddie was very creative because he skillfully mixed keyboards with his unique guitar riffs to make a new and exciting sound. Even though there was tension in the band, the release of 1984 marked a turning point in their success. They kept pushing the limits and embracing new technology and sounds, but they kept bringing the energy that made their live shows stand out. Eddie's journey from being annoyed to coming up with a great idea showed how creatively one can make something amazing even when things are hard. Van Halen's growth during this time shows how talented, determined, and able they are to adapt to the constantly changing music scene. Discover Eddie Van Halen's battle with addiction, revealing how personal struggles impacted his health and relationships within the band. Individual problems and failed attempts. Eddie Van Halen found out he was addicted when the stress of being a rock star got to be too much for him. It started out as a way to deal with the stress of being successful and famous, but it quickly turned into a big substance abuse problem. Eddie began abusing substances and alcohol to deal with the stress of traveling and the responsibility of being in the eye. Sadly, this way of life began to badly hurt his health. His energy level dropped, and he backed away, feeling alone among the people nearby. Eddie's marriage to actress Valerie Bertinelli at the same time also had its own problems. At first, they looked like the perfect pair. As celebrities, they helped each other deal with the demands of their jobs. Eddie's substance problems got worse, though, and their relationship began to suffer as well. Valerie had a hard time getting used to Eddie's changes, and she often felt helpless as she watched him fall. Their love was overshadowed by his addiction, which led to arguments and misunderstandings between them. They both wanted their marriage to work, even though dealing with Eddie's problems often made them feel alone and cut off. Eddie's mental health was also becoming a bigger fear. The stress of being a rock star and his substance use made him depressed and anxious. He felt like he was stuck in a circle of addiction that was hard to get out of. Eddie often felt very alone, even though many people liked and admired him. Isolation made him use substances, which started a pattern that doesn't seem to have a way out. It became very clear that he had to deal with his problem and how it affected his life and relationships. His health was getting worse, which was affecting his personal and work life in a big way. One big problem was that he had to have surgery on his hip because of years of hard work and damage to the body. Unfortunately, this process found a disease called vascular necrosis. In this condition, the bone's blood flow is slowed down and it starts to break down. Eddie was very upset about this news because it made it harder for him to play music, which was his passion. Eddie's health issues became clear, especially on the tour in 1995. He struggled to keep up with the strict routine even though it hurt him a lot. His physical problems made his mental health even worse and made it hard for him to stay focused and engaged with the band. This was a turning point for Eddie because he had to face not only his addiction, but also how it hurt his jobs and body. Eddie's problems got worse on a personal level, and Van Halen's sound changed too. Health problems and substance abuse started to weaken the band's ties, even though they had always been close. The teamwork that was once smooth became tense. Eddie's absences for health reasons and his substance problems slowed down their ability to come up with new songs, which made the other members of the band angry and made them question the future. They fought the problems Eddie was having, but they also wanted to help him. Eddie was determined to get through his personal problems, even though there were problems along the way. He knew he had to take control of his life for the sake of his family and health, so he began looking for addiction help. Even though it wasn't easy, this path to recovery was important for him to get his life and art back on track. The problems Eddie had with his health and his substance use brought attention to the issues many musicians have in the business. Eddie's story shows us how strong resilience is and how important it is to get help. But the pressures of fame can sometimes lead to bad things. Eddie's path through substances and health problems was one of pain and growth in the end. It showed how much he loved music and how good he was. These problems tested him, but they also gave him chances to think about himself and change. Eddie learned that being proud of his accomplishments was only one part of the process. Another part was understanding his flaws. He kept coming up with new music through it all, and inspired a huge number of people while dealing with problems in his own life. His story is a powerful reminder that even when things are hard, there is a way to find healing and hope. Back together again. As early as 2004, fans were excited when Van Halen announced a comeback tour with David Lee Roth, the band's first lead singer. It was like a dream come true. Everyone was thrilled to see the beloved group back on stage, belting out the songs that defined a generation. The band was playing to cheering crowds, and the air was filled with both electric energy and nostalgia. Things were getting worse behind the scenes of this exciting comeback. It was clear that Eddie Van Halen was hurting as the tour went on. He had been sick for years, and it started to show up in his acts. Fans noticed that he was always tired and that he seemed to be in pain. Eddie's guitar playing wasn't as good as it used to be, but the music was still great. Fans and other band members began to wonder about this. Thoughts about Eddie's health took away from the fun of the reunion trip. This time also brought back the fights between band members. After years of building up, disagreements began to appear again. Eddie's more serious attitude sometimes clashed with David Lee Roth's happy attitude and stage appearance. These changes caused problems within the band, which led to times of anger and disagreement. Eddie's health problems and the stress of acting again made it hard for the trio to find a good balance. Even though they loved and were friends, the road ahead was rough. Eddie's friendship with his son Wolfgang Van Halen gave him a lot of strength during these hard times. Wolfgang had always admired Eddie's skill because he saw his father deal with the ups and downs of being a rock star as a child. When Wolfgang became the bassist for Van Halen in 2006, the band got a new lease on life. Eddie got a new start on life and direction when his son joined him on stage. Being in the band with Wolfgang was more than just a musical addition. It helped the whole family heal. When father and son performed together, it was a very important time for them to bond. Waltz looked up to his dad as a role model and as a great artist. Eddie was motivated by the chance to share his love of music with the next generation. Events that happened to them both on and off stage brought them closer together, which had been missing during the rough years. This new part of their lives also gave their family time to heal and get along again. Having Wolfgang by his side gave Eddie the strength to face his problems with new energy. Eddie had been through a lot. Away from the stage, they became closer by having open conversations about music, family, and life in general. Eddie found strength in this friendship because it helped him remember how important family is in the midst of the chaos of the music business. Eddie's strength shone through all of life's ups and downs. The demands of the reunion tour were hard on him, but they also showed how dedicated he was to his job and his family. With the love he had for his child and the tie they shared on hand, Eddie got through the hard times of fame and personal problems. Eddie was an inspiration to everyone around him, even when things were hard. He showed that real power comes from the love and relationships we build. Eddie Van Halen's life changed over the years to show how strong family, music, and strength can be. His memory lived on in the relationships he cared about just as much as in the music he made. Van Halen's story is one of triumphs, difficulties, and finally the strong bond between a father and son, a bond that lived through the demands of fame and the rock and roll lifestyle. Learn about Eddie Van Halen's groundbreaking ideas and how he changed music forever and left a legacy for future generations. Lasting impressions. As the world fought the COVID-19 outbreak in 2020, Eddie Van Halen was putting up his strongest fight yet. The epidemic caused a huge wave of worry and uncertainty, and Eddie's medical road would become more difficult during this time. He had a lot of health problems for a long time, but this time would be the hardest for him in ways he never thought possible. Eddie was told he had tongue cancer in 2020, which was very sad. His family and he were both deeply shocked by this news. In addition to other health problems, he had already had surgery on his hip and a long battle with substance abuse. This new task felt different, though. Eddie bravely began his therapy journey, even though he was in pain and didn't know what to do. Even though things were hard, he stayed positive and kept his mind on what was important, his family, and the music that had shaped his life. Eddie sometimes thought about the great things that had happened in his life in the past few years, how much he loved making music, and how much he loved his family. He loved spending time with his son Wolfgang and the bond they had formed through music. Eddie kept working even though his health was getting worse. He played the guitar for relaxation and thought about the memories he had made with his friends and family. His love of music never changed, and his unwavering determination kept everyone around him going. Because of Eddie Van Halen, the music world has changed a lot. His creative ways of playing the guitar changed rock music and inspired a huge number of other artists. Eddie changed what it meant to be a musician by making speed, accuracy, and creativity more important. For people who wanted to become guitarists, techniques like tapping, which he mastered and helped spread, opened up new options. He showed how the guitar could be used to communicate feelings, tell stories, and push limits, going beyond its mere use. Many people know him for the famous solo he played on Michael Jackson's Beat It. This relationship brought rock and pop closer together by showing how Eddie could make timeless songs in a lot of different styles. It was a turning point in music history because it showed how versatile he was as an artist and solidified his status as a guitar hero. Eddie's influence is still important to the music world, even though he has died. Guitarists today still look to his music for ideas on how to bring the same emotion and creativity to every note. People will always remember Eddie Van Halen for how skilled he was, how kind he was, and how dedicated he was to his job. It's always a good thing to remember that music brings people together, and that great legends live on in the hearts of those they inspire. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Eddie Van Halen's life. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to click on the next video popping up on your screen.